morning, everyone. Welcome to, I was going to say, Tanya, you disappeared for a second, but you're back. Good morning. We are Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I am the Director of Southborough Youth and Family. And with me this morning, we have Megan Island, our Assistant Director. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning.
We have Shannon Knyman, who is our Program Coordinator. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Sarah.
And we are so excited to welcome Tanya Snyder from, now I always get this incorrect because there's many layers of service here. So Tanya is from the William James College, the Friedman Center, here to talk to us about interface referral services. Do I have that right, Tanya?
Perfect.
Oh,
you did
good.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you
for having me. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's toast. Let's start our morning with the toast. Good morning. Eat, sleep, pet, cat, and repeat. I love that, Megan.
Me too.
Well, so how was everybody's weekend? I feel like this is like a tradition. Every Tuesday, we're supposed to have bad weather. So I successfully managed to skate my way out to the car this morning and got my 5-year-old into the car without him slipping underneath it somehow. It was so icy and wet this morning. But everybody's made it safely where they need to be.
Yep, from the bed over to the desk and down to the kitchen to make some coffee, back down to the desk. It's been amazing.
Yeah, nice. I'm really glad you didn't have to skate because I'd be worried about like your roof or something if that were the case. Yeah. Megan and Tanya, did you guys have a good weekend? Anything exciting happen?
Yeah, I mean, I got to do something. My birthday was earlier this month. So that was fun. And part of my birthday, since I'm at the point where I don't need to collect any more things, I decided to do a food pantry drive for my birthday. And so we got to do deliveries for that yesterday to the 2 local food pantries. So it felt like my birthday was fun despite the pandemic and also helpful, I hope helpful to others. So
Very nice.
Lovely idea. That's great. I see so many people doing, oh, sorry, Shannon. This is the problem with Zoom. We're all talking at the same time. I was going to say, I see people doing online fundraisers for their birthdays, but that's the first I've heard of a collection of food donations. What a great idea.
Oh, nice.
Great. Wonderful. Yeah, well, we just, what was it, Valentine's Day on Sunday. And I remember asking friends if anybody celebrates Valentine's Day in their house. We had a fancy meal, I think, although my husband loves to cook. And so I feel like every meal is kind of fancy. So I don't remember exactly what we had, but did anybody wear like red or do anything out of the ordinary?
Yeah, we did nice breakfast. We had red velvet waffles and bacon and raspberries and whatever. And we did a fondue at night.
Nice.
Oh,
chocolate fondue.
I was going to say, didn't I see that you had ordered a fondue, but they gave you the wrong ingredients?
Noyan, my husband, had said, why don't we do something fun? Why don't you put in a curbside order at Whole Foods and get like a bunch of stuff to dip and some chocolate and we'll make fondue. And I was like, okay, that sounds like fun. And I put the order in and I bought some groceries for the week too, and packed the whole thing and was like, where's the chocolate? So there was no chocolate. There was queso from the week before that I was looking for. So I guess everything's a week behind. So next week when, I don't know, when we're going to have steak, I'll get chocolate.
Yeah, I was totally picturing you guys dunking strawberries into cheese, which interesting combination. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, happy Valentine's Day nonetheless. I appreciate you all. So let's talk about interface. Now, we have some viewers from other communities, and I want to start today's conversation by prefacing that Interface Referral Service is available to subscribing communities. So we are here to talk about it today as a Southborough Town department because we were very fortunate enough to start a contract with Interface for the calendar year of 2021. But those of you who might be watching, I think it's still valuable information to learn about Interface. I've had several conversations with people from other communities upon starting this, because you might be interested in seeing if you can get Interface for your community, or I know Interface is available to many communities. You might actually have it in your community and not even realize it. So we will be sure to post the website at the end of the show in the comments so that you have an opportunity to go onto their website. And at the very top, you'll see an option to choose communities. There's so many communities that have this service, which is wonderful. So, so let's talk about it a little bit more. Tanya, maybe you can start by telling us, what is Interface Referral Service?
Sure. So Interface was started back in 2003 by our executive director, who was working in the Newton Public Schools at the time, and really realized there was an access to care issue. Even in Newton, where there's a wealth of providers available, it was still hard to get to providers. So she started Interface. It was very small. It was in Newton only, in Newton Public Schools only, and then it sort of evolved. In 2007, we became part of William James College as she took on a role here. She brought Interface with her, and then it continued to expand out. We're in over 73 communities, I believe, at this point in time. So as you mentioned, looking at that communities tab can be really helpful to see if your school district or your town subscribes to the service to see if we can assist you. But it's an outpatient mental health resource and referral helpline. So we can connect callers with providers of outpatient mental health services in and around their community.
That's great. That's really great. I actually, in looking at the communities tab, found out that I have it in my own community, which I had no idea, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's an amazing service, because for those who know, if you've tried to find a provider, a mental health provider, it can be a challenge. So we were wondering, like, why, for someone who hasn't had the experience of trying to find someone, particularly if you're looking for, you know, if you need some specific things, if you're looking for something specific in a provider, doing that by yourself is pretty hard. So for someone who this is new to them, that they're on the search for a provider, why is this a good service, Tanya?
Sure. So I think one thing to sort of keep in mind is that we know about 20% of adults and about 10 to 20% of kids and adolescents struggle with mental health issues at some point in their life. We know with the pandemic that those numbers are really skyrocketing. If you've been watching the news, they've been talking about how those numbers are increasing, particularly around anxiety, depression, substance use, and suicidal ideation. So, you know, things that are concerning and really problematic for people. So where we come in is, as you mentioned, many people try to find providers on their own and find it a very frustrating experience. Oftentimes they spend a great deal of time doing that, and it doesn't yield the kind of results they were hoping for in terms of callbacks or feeling like it's a good fit or taking your insurance. And so we know that when you're, you know, obviously when you're in need, making all those phone calls is daunting in and of itself. And then to be not, you know, called back and told no over and over again, it becomes sort of feeling hopeless around finding the right fit. So I think where we come in terms of breaking down barriers is that this is our job. So all that time we have the time to do, and we know where to go in terms of the ability of our database of 9,000 licensed and vetted providers. It's actually over 9,000. We can drill down in terms of making sure that they take your insurance, that they treat your age group, that they can meet your mental health needs that you're presenting. And you know, now we're doing telehealth for everything because vaccines have yet to fully roll out. But eventually people will want to meet together in person again. And so we can look for providers who are doing telehealth for now, but are located close enough, hopefully for the future, to meet your needs. If you desire to meet in person ongoing. The exciting thing is insurance has agreed to cover telehealth ongoing. So for many people that actually has decreased a barrier that was in place previously around, finding time and the ability to travel. So this is the double-edged sword, right, of the pandemic, is that we've seen an increase in issues, which is certainly concerning, but we've also seen some increase in access to care, which has been great, and that will continue post-pandemic.
Yeah, I had to smile while you were describing that, because in our office, as a sort of social service mental health resource for the town, we had our own version of referral service going on here, and we're a small department, and that was a small piece of many things that we were doing. And it is really hard. I mean, for any particular individual, and I know you're going to touch upon this in a minute, but there's upwards of 6, 7, 10 variables of what the person needs and is looking for, and it sometimes can be like a needle in a haystack.
Right.
So, and I love that you said, this is our job, this is what we do, so we have the time dedicated to doing it, which is fantastic.
And sometimes too, when you're not feeling great, the idea of digging and working hard on something like that is just, it's daunting. If you're in a good place, you might be able to do some of that work by yourself and you're still getting lots of barriers. But, if getting up and brushing your teeth is a tough thing to do, then trying to find a provider is hard.
I'm sure coming up against all those barriers could really exacerbate an issue too. And, I could see a person just easily throwing their hands up and saying, forget it. So,
So Tanya, what's the process? What can someone expect when they call you?
So we are a helpline, not a hotline. We're very clear that if you're in a crisis, we shouldn't be your first step because we're only open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Every community has a local emergency services provider. And of course, you can always call 911 if you're truly in crisis in that moment. So we're open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Someone calls us. We've been very busy. So usually you can get through to one of our lead resource and referral counselors on our helpline. Sometimes right now we are going to voicemail just because of the onslaught of calls. We do ask that people leave a name, number, and the community they're calling from, and we aim to call them back that day, if not the next day. So we're aiming to call them back as soon as we possibly can. If they leave us the best time to reach them too, we can aim to call them back at a time that's more convenient for them, because we know people are working and have kids and other responsibilities throughout the course of the day. And so they may not be able to take our call the minute we call back. So if they tell us, I'm best reached at this time, we'll try to reach them back. If they get through to the helpline, we do about a 20-minute intake over the phone. And that's collecting, if anyone has done clinical intakes before, either you as professionals or have sought services, it's really a modified version of that. So we're collecting information on what kind of insurance they have, what are those mental health needs they're looking to address, and the impact of those needs on their life in terms of, functioning at work or school or within relationships, sleeping, eating, all those kind of impacts that we talk about. We also do a brief substance abuse screening, and that's really to make sure that, again, we're finding providers in the more traditional once-a-week outpatient mental health lane. So we want to make sure that we're the right first stop, and we shouldn't be directing you to some other resource that may be more appropriate given the acuity of care at that particular time in the call. We're also assessing homicidality, suicidality, and history of abuse and neglect, again, so we can find the right, type of service, but also assess whether or not we are the right first stop for someone. After that 20-minute intake, you're assigned a confidential code as the caller, and that's going to be how we refer to you to providers, so that we're never going to give out your confidential information, no names, addresses, school you attend, none of those pieces of data to providers. until, unless you allow us to do so, to facilitate something on your behalf. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But at the end of that, you're given this confidential code, and in 1 to 2 business days, you're assigned a lead resource and referral counselor. That person will reach out to you and introduce themselves and tell you that they're working on your case. And they're the person who's going to cull through our database of over 9,000 licensed and vetted providers and match on the criteria that we talked about. So what are your needs? What is your age? What are you looking for in terms of addressing your issues? If you have any specifics that you're interested in, locations you can get to if you want to meet with that person eventually in person, what's your availability look like? And also, I think that's it. Any sort of, extra things. Sometimes there's some extra stuff in there. And then they start putting out calls to providers, again, just presenting a snapshot of what you presented to us, as well as your confidential code. Now, as you can imagine, we're calling providers and sometimes they're in session with other people. So we leave messages and then they listen to those messages and call us back and say, yes, this is a good fit for practice right now, or no, it is not. As callers are probably aware, sometimes people become, credentialed on a panel that they weren't before and they haven't told us yet, or they go off of an insurance panel that we have them on, but they're no longer taking. Or sometimes it's really more about the mix within their practice at that time. So sometimes people will try to have a mix of clients across the lifespan in their practice, or a mix of insurance types, or a mix of needs. So they'll let us know whether or not this is a good fit for their practice right now or not. Oftentimes they'll give us some additional data, like, I have an appointment open this Wednesday at 2, have them call me and we can secure that appointment, something like that. And then the lead counselor, usually, although we work as a team to help each other to make things move along as quickly as possible, will reach back out to the caller and provide that contact information for the provider, and any sort of information they may have given us about appointment times coming up, or numbers to call them at, or how to contact them if it's email or phone call. That process from the time someone calls us to us finding a potential match can take upwards of 3 weeks. We're often much faster, but sometimes, depending on those different configurations of needs and insurance type and locations and time available, it can take us a little bit longer sometimes. Once you have a match, then we follow up with you about a week or 10 days later to make sure that you've been able to connect with that provider, that you have an appointment scheduled if you haven't already had an appointment. And then we follow up after that initial appointment, if you haven't had one yet, to ensure that it was a good fit. We offer to follow up after a second or sometimes even a third appointment if you're on the fence about whether or not that was a good match for you. As you can imagine, sometimes people don't call us back either because they're busy or they get off and going. And so sometimes we do close their case without finding out if they were able to connect with a provider we match them with. And sometimes people just aren't ready yet. They were sort of ready to collect the information and think about it, but they're not quite ready to go. And so sometimes callers will tell us, they're all set for now. And so we won't follow up after a session because they're not going to attend a session just yet. They're going to hold on to that information for the future.
I remember you saying in a previous conversation about it being time sensitive, which we can appreciate having done this ourselves. And you kind of reflected on that a little bit, that, it's busy. You're getting a lot of phone calls. A lot of people are looking for providers. And so I think another thing to highlight is, just that if you are given a match, the expectation or the hope is that you are able to connect with that provider as soon as possible, because that slot might be taken up quickly.
Yeah, we do recommend typically within 1 to 3 business days, and currently we're saying as soon as possible. And I'll often encourage people that I'm working with to, if you have the ability to hang up from me and call them or email them, please do that right away, because those slots are going to fill up incredibly fast. But I would say, when we talk to callers who aren't quite ready to move forward, at least holding on to that match, they may not have availability, but that they're a good fit for you otherwise. So they're a good starting point for when you're ready, right? You may hit them at a time where they have some availability now, And if not, people can call us back and we can begin the process again. But I sort of call those back pocket options, right? Like hold them in your back pocket. We know they're a good fit for you. The key piece may be availability. When you're ready, they may no longer be ready, but they're worth a shot. And then if it doesn't work out, call us back and we can start the process again.
So that was going to be my next question was, now, I think you guys are amazing and do incredible work, but you're not magicians. You know, there's only so many providers that exist in the area. So what happens if you can't find a match or don't find a match? What then?
Yeah, so we often say we can't create what doesn't exist. We wish we could. We wish we had that magical ability. I wish for it too. It would make all of our lives much, much easier. But what I think we really excel at is we turn over all the possible stones we can possibly turn over to find a potential match. We are also either licensed in our field. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor. We have PsyDs, LICSWs, LSWs, all the versions of social work degrees there are.
LMHC.
On our helpline. It feels like that sometimes, a little bit of a alphabet soup. And we also have students who are studying in the field on our line because we're connected with William James College, which is a graduate school of professional psychology. Actually, they're expanding to include some bachelor's completion. So I keep calling it a graduate school, but we're becoming wider than that, which is great news. So what I think the benefit of that is, where I was going with that was really we have the skill set to sort of what we do call counseling through the match. So we have guides on our website and we're able to talk with callers around where can we get close enough to find what you're looking for. Sometimes that may be a wait list option. That's not ideal, and we know that, and we look to try to find something better than a waitlist option, but sometimes that may be the best option for a particular caller based on the configuration of their needs. But really, we do a lot of pieces around how can we get from your wish list of what you want to something that will still work for you. So I'm thinking, you know, I was helping someone last week and working on, they wanted this very specific type of therapy. They have a more challenging insurance, just in that there's not a lot of providers on their panel. And, you know, we had to have a sort of discussion around, I think if you want this particular type of therapy, what I'm finding is there's not a lot of providers who take your insurance, who are in your area, who treat that age group, who have availability right now, right? So you could either sort of talk to them about getting on a wait, or I can talk to them for you about getting on a wait list, potentially. We could try to find a different option that meets many of your needs, but isn't this specific type of therapy that's provided. They could go back to their insurance company and talk about whether or not they have out of network benefits and what that looks like in terms of financial impact. And we could find someone who might do that specific request, but use their out of network benefits. Not ideally, but if they had the resources, they could pay out of pocket for those, that particular type of therapy service. We could hold off and they could call back when it's less busy and that those people may have openings. So we sort of just problem solve with them around, and the other option we talked about was, could they get their doctor to make some recommendation that then they can use with their insurance company to talk about maybe a single case agreement, which is where you can get that specific need met because your medical professionals feel like that's the only thing that will help you, and trying to find something else is not a good match. The hard part around that is finding a provider who will then take that rate from this insurance company, because the rate that they would be accepting is far less than what an out-of-pocket payment would be. So there's some barriers along the way, but we talk through what each of those might look like and really sort of try to go with the next viable option for that person. So, you know, we're not pushing our agenda. We're saying, here are some ways that we can go about doing this. Which one do you think is best? And I'll explore that option as far as I can. And we may be revisiting this several times to get to a good point. But we'll sort of start with what they think is the next best step in terms of looking for options.
And I would just add just a little plug, and again, this is Southborough specific, and there might be different resources. I know a number of other communities, at least in Massachusetts, have a youth and family service department. But that's why we have a nice partnership, because we have licensed mental health counselors on staff. And so our goal in bringing Interface on board was so that we could provide stabilization, support of, you know, treatment of symptoms until a resident can get in through a provider identified through their insurance with Interface possibly. And so, you know, even though there might be delays and additional barriers, even with Interface involved, you know, if you're a Southborough resident, please feel free to reach out to us. We can offer some additional support along the way until that opening becomes available to you. So,
yes.
So, Tanya, I'm wondering, can Interface help with finding different types of providers?
Yeah, so I mentioned the alphabet soup behind our name. So we can certainly start looking for, you know, if people had degree, you know, preferences around, you know, I really want to see a social worker, or I'm really interested in a licensed mental health counselor or PsyD. We can certainly look for those different types of providers. We also have providers who provide different types of therapy. As I mentioned, you know, that person was looking for a very specific type of therapy. We can certainly drill down in terms of type of therapy. And then we find all sorts of different types of services. So within that, then we have different degrees and expertise as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my only additional question was, you know, other than individual counseling, are there other things that you can help people find?
Yeah, so when we have a community-wide contract, we serve across the lifespan. For contracts where we only serve the school system, the child needs to be involved in those services. So it's important to think about that. But in terms of your contract, it's across the lifespan. So we can find, you know, couples counseling, family counseling, individual counseling, group counseling, neuropsych testing, and psychiatry. So med management services as well. And for those who are children who require in-home therapy, so we usually think about this as for kids who have mass health products and who have struggled to engage in outpatient therapy where the family is willing to engage in a family therapy model, we can connect those callers with in-home therapy as well. Commercial insurances are beginning to cover that service as well, but it's been a little bit of a hiccup along the way, just because their expectations and then the provider's expectations are sort of still working through matching up. But in-home therapy services could be lined up for that population as well. Some of those we do like to clarify based on your insurance type will not be covered by your insurance. So for example, neuropsych testing often has a large out-of-pocket expense for testing, particularly if it includes any sort of educational testing for children components. And also group counseling oftentimes is not covered by insurance or not completely covered by insurance. The other pieces to know sort of are in the pandemic, we've found that providers are struggling with family therapy via Zoom. As you can imagine, it's hard for us to sort of communicate, all four of us on here, and not talk over each other. And so we are hearing a lot of family therapists saying, you know, let's hold off for now, but that is not a forever thing. So I just like to clarify, you know, we're seeing some unusual trends given the pandemic, and some of those are blessings, like the increased access via telehealth, and some are more challenging in terms of family therapy or even engaging very little kids via Zoom. So we're having providers saying that that's a struggle as well. And we know that, right? Like, so, actually the many callers are parents who are saying they're struggling to engage in school. And we're like, I know. And yet this is going to be via telehealth. So it's going to be similar. We're looking forward to the, people getting vaccinated so that it opens up a little bit more. Providers are getting vaccinated currently. They're in that line of, the phase. So we think that there'll be more and more options for in-person and in-home providers moving forward. So we're hopeful that those things will shift and change, but there are a few barriers that we're seeing currently because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
That's great. This is great.
Yeah. I have to laugh too at the idea, because the primary video conferencing platform we use for our therapy sessions, unfortunately right now only offers, you can only meet with one person at a time. So I have to laugh at the prospect of working with a family who might not be getting along very well. It's kind of like, have you seen those like get along t-shirts where you have two children wear one t-shirt and they have to stay like that? You have this whole family crowding around one device, super close together, and they're not necessarily getting along all that well right now. It's kind of like, could be helpful, could be really challenging. But that's great. So lots of really helpful information. Again, just to reiterate, the partnership that we are really excited about with Interface is we as Youth and Family Services will continue to provide mental health support in a sort of short, intermediate term basis. And with the help of Interface, we hope to help find people resources for longer term care that they might need. And so, we welcome you to still call us. You can start with Interface, but if you need support while you're waiting for that additional resource to become available, please feel free to reach out to us for that. So Tanya, thank you so much, for coming on today. We're so excited to be able to offer this to the Southborough community, and it's wonderful how many communities you guys serve. And certainly if anybody has additional questions that we did not answer today, please feel free to reach out to us and we can get you those answers for sure.
Thank you for having.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think really importantly, the phone number to call.
Yes. I was going to say thank you for having us. And I think that we're very excited to help callers. We know that this is a really hard time with the pandemic, and we want to be here to help people get safely into a therapeutic relationship. So we're really glad to work as partners in terms of what you can do and then what we can do to facilitate connections to long-term care. Our helpline is 1-888-244-6843. Again, 1-888-244-6843. And we're available Monday through Friday from 9 to 5.
Wonderful. And as we said, we'll post the phone number, we'll post the website in our comments so that you don't have to keep rewinding this segment of today's show to get that. So thanks everybody for joining us. Next week, which is February 23rd, we're going to be talking about the power of positivity and positive psychology, which is really hard. We were talking before the show about how for some people that might stir up some frustration or resentment about being told to be positive, given the year that many of us are having. But we do want to try to give you some information that we think might be helpful in getting through some of these difficult times. So we hope you'll join us for that. And we're going to be welcoming back our trusty sidekick, Lisa Avery Peck, who's our graduate intern, to be with the call with us next week. So we'll see you all then. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.